Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of DATI Civic and Peace Education Audiovisual Series, Episode 14, Darbo-Suah and the Animals in Sani-whenyee. This is your presenter, Dr. Joseph Tomongalode Baba Senior, Executive Director and founder of Decantry Artists Theater Incorporated. Welcome to another edition of our program. And this time around, we are going to be using the ancient African art of storytelling to express, and also to discuss with you some very important issues that confront Liberians today. Most of Africa's history is not written, it is oral. That is because most of Africa's ancient writings were destroyed during periods of conflict and largely due to the slave trade. However, most of what was passed on to present-day generations of Africans is through oral traditions, such as African fireside stories, parables, and proverbs, and that our elders share with us during their leisure periods. Hence, African storytelling has two basic dimensions. First, African fireside storytelling serves as a form of entertainment, and second, it is a pedagogical tool to teach us moral lessons. Because back in the day when our ancestors came from the farm, after they took bath and had a dinner, they would relax, before the hut or before a fireplace, and they would tell stories. And these stories were not just only meant to entertain them for relaxation, but it was also meant to teach them moral lessons and to pass on the wisdom their ancestors passed on to them, to their children and their children's children. So that's how we know more about our people today, simply because of storytelling. So it's a very important aspect of African history and culture. And it's very effective as well because it serves two purposes. One, you are entertaining people when you're telling tales, but then at the same time, the storyline that is in that story also educates you on real life situations that we encounter every day in our lives. First, as I said, African fireside storytelling serves as a form of entertainment. And second, it is a pedagogical tool to teach us moral lessons. In this episode, we will use this ancient African art to entertain and educate our audience on some of the crucial issues that confront the Liberian people. Sometimes being too direct may not drive the desired message Liberians need to hear about the mistakes they are making constantly to destroy themselves and the hegemony. Thus, it is hoped that this story about Darbo-Suah and the animals in Sani-whenyee will drive a sense of awareness in the scores of Liberians as Liberia slowly wanes away into a failed and lawless state where justice and liberty are being strangulated by the forces of death and evil. Once upon a time, well, in the English language, you would say once upon a time. But if I were in a crime village sitting by the fireside, I would say, and then my audience will respond and say, Yiyo. So let's try that. Okay. Long ago in the Crown Bassa tropical rainforest, there lived an old lady commonly known as Darbo-Suah in a tiny village called Sani-whenyee. The name Darbo-Suah means a very old lady in the Bassa language. And the word Sani-whenyee was the name of a small creek that one crossed before entering the village, and it is Kran word that means at the banks of the Sani Creek. I know you may wonder how come this story has a combination of names or words that are from two distinct ethnic groups of Liberia, Kran and Bassa. That is because, according to the stories our forefathers told us, long before our indigenous ancestors migrated to what is now Liberia, the Bassa, Kran, Kru, Grebo, Bele, and Dewan peoples were one big family. They consider themselves in the Bassa language as Nyonyuado, Nyonyuado Ebo, which means one people. We are one people. And in the Kran language, they refer to themselves, the Kwas refer to themselves as Dodi. Dodi meaning we're from the same mother, which, a kind of corroborates the concept and belief that all these different ethnic groups that I just talked about, the Kwa ethnic groups in Liberia, are derived from the same ancestors, that their fathers were brothers. They spoke a group of similar languages that belonged to the Kwa linguistic cluster. And in fact, in the beginning, it is said that their ancestors were brothers. This is the traditional belief and concept that bonds the Kwa-speaking people of Africa in general, and not just only those that live in Liberia. So there are other Kwa-speaking people in the Ivory Coast, in Ghana, in Nigeria, in Cameroon, in Sierra Leone, so it's not just us alone here in Liberia that are Kwa. We have other Kwa-speaking groups like the Igbo, the Yorubas, the Ashantis, the Popo people. They are all part of the Kwa, linguistic cluster of Africa. So we are a part of a bigger, larger family of different languages in Africa. For an example, back in the day, families, especially those that spoke similar languages, lived close by each other, and they protected one another. They farmed and traveled together and shared whatever they had in common. So that is the reason in Liberia, the Kwa-speaking peoples are clustered in eastern, southeastern, and south central Liberia. Their lands border one another, and the lands that they own Grand Gita, River G, Sano, Maryland, Grand Cru, Grand Bassa, River Sess, parts of Montserrado, Bomi, Maigibi, Bong, and Nima. So Sani-whenyee has a combination of names or words that derive from both the Bassa and Kran languages, because this imaginary village is in the heart of the Kran Bassa tropical rainforest in Liberia. Long ago, when Darbo-Suah was a beautiful girl, her parents named her Madie, which means young or new woman in the Bassa language. But when she grew older and started hatching children by the dozens, say in her mid-40s, the villagers called her Marvlin, big woman. By the time she reached her 60s, she was then called Darbo. And several decades later, she became the Darbo-Suah, around whom this story is centered. At the time when the incident that prompted this story occurred, Darbo-Suah was 103 years old. She was an old Paku. She had 200 biological children of her own, 1,000 grandchildren, and 555 great-grandchildren, and 333 great-great-grandchildren. When the missionaries and Cree people came They took most of our children to live with them to go to school. And when they got their education, they decided to live in big cities with their families. However, they would come occasionally to pay Darbo-Suah a visit to find out how she was doing. So one of the things that I'm explaining in this story is that sometimes most of our people came from the different villages and towns, and because of the introduction of Western culture and history, many people come and go to Western schools, and after they are reorientated, with the Western culture, they tend to turn their backs at their own culture and to want to live a new way of life in isolation of the very people that they are part of. And so that in itself is a problem with respect to how we educate our children. Going forward, we need to educate our children by telling them the history and culture of their people, so that even if they got more educated in the Western sense, that they will still be attached to their history and culture, because they will need that in order for them to make sound decisions and also to develop love and appreciation for their background. Also, most of the villagers that lived in Sani-whenyee died long before Darbo-Suah, and their children also migrated to other towns and villages to pursue different lifestyles other than farming. So it was only Darbo-Suah and the animals that lived in Sani-whenyee most of the time. The animals included dog, billy goat, sheep, chicken, duck, cow, and cat. All these animals lived under Darbo-Suah's guidance. She cooked and fed them every blessed day, and there was nothing too good to give them when they were in need. Mind you, Darbo-Suah was no small potato. She was a dazo. Dazo means she was one of those big zoos. She knew the name of every leaf in the forest, and when she said, "Today, your mouth will twist on one side," that was it. No go come, like your man says. She was 103 years old, but she had the strength of a bull. She could punch you and you would drop dead straight. That's how Darbo was powerful. As old as she was, Darbo-Suah walked to the waterside to fetch her own drinking water and cooking water without using a walking cane. And she would tilt the pan of water on her head without holding the pan like a youngie. So the animals sometimes jokingly called Darbo-Suah "old little young girl." Fear the naked tumba Darbo-Suah had behind her. My giddy self tell lie. My name, I beg you. I didn't say, I beg you. And when Darbo-Suah cooked for you, fear the naked scent of her soup. You will lick all your 10 fingers. She prepared delicious meals and she shared them with the animals, for she was so very generous. One thing about Darbo-Suah, she could remember people. She was a living encyclopedia. All our big book people them those days, like Tuan Wule, T. Twe, J. Rudolph Grams, J. Jenkins Peel, all of them used to travel to Sani-whenyee to seek her advice on many subject matters, for she was a jack of all trades and master of none. Even our papi, VAT, and all pay heed to Darbo-Suah. So you must know Darbo-Suah was not easy. Oftentimes, dog and cat were Darbo-Suah's most frequent visitors. Dog will bark if he saw any threat to Darbo-Suah's life. Ooh, 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 ooh. Ooh, 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 ooh. Dog made sure the old lady was safe, and cat chased out rats and other creeping things that attempted to sneak in Darbo-Suah's hut to bite her toes while she was asleep because Darbo-Suah could snore. Such was the cordial relationship between Darbo-Suah and her animal friends that lived in the same village with her. But one day, something strange happened that brought about the downfall of the animals in Sani-whenyee village. According to one old mom who laid a G's on me, and I'm not even going to call her name self, because your children these days, you don't keep no secret. That's one of the reasons Yakpa is all over Liberia, because Liberian people will like too much chit. Anyway, according to the old man, she said it was on a cool sunny day in January when the scorching tropical sun was situated in the middle of the universe. It was kind of breezy, and as the cool monsoon winds blew across the village, Yami Pepe said, "Yabin here." The skins of all the animals in Darbo-Suah were ashy, and dry leaves dropped from the branches of trees that surrounded Sani-whenyee. It was just one of those mysterious days when one least expects any unforeseen circumstances to take place. However, on this day, Darbo-Suah woke up not feeling too well. She called Dog to please fetch her some water, and then she asked Cat to fetch her some firewood so she could heat some water to bathe. The kind of hot water Darbo-Suah used to bathe with, if you try it, your whole skin will peel, it will melt. Anyway, she took a hot bath and rubbed her body down with palm kernel oil and some white chalk. According to ELDC, not me, but ELDC, this chalk was a special one. It was one of her pans her late husband left with her. After rubbing the palm kernel oil and pan on her entire body, Darbo-Suah put her soup pot on the fire hearth and seasoned the pot. And then she decided to lie down on her mat to take a quick nap. She felt if she took a nap, it would help her to gain some strength so she could prepare her fufu to swallow with a delicious clear water basa pepper soup she was cooking that had all the small yama in it, the doo and everything. Unfortunately, she slept longer than she had planned. The soup dried out of the pot, and the next thing you know, some of the flames that came from the spillover from the soup pot spread to her mat she was sleeping on, and the mat started burning. Amen. Suddenly, the fire spread to other areas of Darbo-Suah's hut, and the large smoke started fuming out of the hut. The first animal that noticed and smelled the smoke was Dog. He was like, I smell something burning. Then Dog started barking, woo, 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 woo. Not too long after that, Cat came running when he heard Dog bark. Meow, meow, meow. What is it? Why are you barking so loudly? She asked. I'm barking because I see smoke coming from Darbo-Suah's hut. And where there is smoke, there must be fire. So come and let us find out what it is that Darbo-Suah is cooking that might have caused all this smoke to fume out of her hut. By the time Dog and Cat got to Darbo-Suah's hut, the fire had engulfed the entire hut. and there was practically no way for both animals to enter the hut to help Darbo-Suah get out of danger. So Dog decided to ask other animals to help Cat and him rescue Darbo-Suah. Dog also instructed Cat to go and fetch some water to throw it in the fire to calm it, while Dog ran to get other animals to come and join them save the old lady's life. The first animal Dog asked was Chicken. Go, 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 was there pecking on the ground. Chicken had his huge cutlass strapped across his shoulder. He was on his way to his farm when Dog greeted and approached him to assist rescue the old lady, who by now was at the point of death. Good morning, Chicken, Dog greeted the animal. Good morning. What's up? You seem very anxious, Chicken replied. Darbo-Suah's hut is on fire. Can you please give Cat and me a hand so we can rescue her from the fire? Chicken looked Dog in the face, eyeball to eyeball, and replied, I am very sorry, my dear brother. I'm on my way to my farm. You can ask another animal. And away Chicken was gone. Dog was so surprised at the way Chicken brushed past him, and Chicken never even looked back himself. However, Dog still did not give up. Instead, he went running to Dog. Quack, 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 quack. He went running to Dog's hut to ask for help. When Dog got to Dog's hut, Dog was having a delicious meal. He warmly welcomed Dog and invited Dog to eat with him, but Dog informed Dog that his visit was of a matter of urgency. Tell me what happened, Dog, Dog declared. Darbo-Suah's hut is on fire. We need help to rescue Darbo-Suah from the fire blaze, Dog pleaded with Dog. Oh, I am so sorry, Dog. My wife and I have already planned to travel today. Dog just did not know what to do because every animal he asked so far had let him down. However, he did not give up because he wanted to save Darbo-Suah's life. He still had a couple more options, and he was determined to exhaust them. Then he remembered once Darbo-Suah had given Billy Goat plenty of cassava leaves for dinner when Billy Goat and his family had nothing to eat. Therefore, Dog felt Billy Goat might remember the old lady's kind gesture and might want to return her kindness. So he quickly ran to Billy Goat's compound and explained what was happening to the old lady. But sadly, Billy Goat did not even say "Fwing." He kept chewing cassava leaves, but did not pay Dog any mind. Billy Goat, are you going to stand there just chewing cassava leaves and not even say something, bro? Dog asked. Billy Goat replied, bad. I am not my brother's keeper. Go someplace else and ask for help. Please leave me and let me enjoy myself. Oh, and then Billy Goat, I said he started putting up one show, man. Billy Goat started shaking and rocking. I said, Dog really saw his own bad luck that day. And when bad luck calls your name, even rotten banana can break your teeth. Come see your boy Billy Goat doing the bunga. going down to the ground and coming up and putting his shoulders up. Oh man, as Dog stared at him in disgust. Dog was so frustrated that he just did not know what to do. He had touched base with majority of the animals in Sani-whenyee, but all the animals he asked for help turned him down. Now, he was only left with two other animals, sheep and cow. When he approached both, they gave him cold shoulders. Therefore, Dog decided to call it quits. He said, man, look, I'm tired with this. There's nothing else I can do. But before he left the presence of the two animals, of sheep and cow, Dog said, sheep and cow, I just want to leave you with this parable. When it rains, the rain does not fall on one rooftop. Instead, it falls on every rooftop. Have a pleasant day. And then Dog left to go back to Darbo-Suah's hut. As Dog walked back to Darbo-Suah's hut, he kept speaking to himself because he was too disturbed. Well, this is it. I did my best. What will be, will be. I will go back to Darbo-Suah's hut to join Cat so we can do whatever we can to preserve the old lady's body until her offspring and the villager of Sani-whenyee can come for her burial. You know, Dog was in the position like some people have been when they foresee bad things are about to happen and they forewarn you or forewarn the people and the people don't listen. And they say, man, move from here, man. And I'll give you examples of what I mean by that in a few minutes. So that was the same way Dog felt. After he talked to all the animals, after all the good that Darbo-Suah had done for all the animals, today, there she was in a predicament. She was in danger. Her life was in danger. 103 years old. Her hut was burning. And all the animals she used to feed, not one of them wanted to listen to Dog and or to join Dog and Cats to help rescue the woman. Meanwhile, during the time Dog went from one animal's door to the next asking for help, Cat did his possible best to fetch water and to spray it on the fire. So if he had enough help, he and those who came to help could have fetched enough water to put out the fire all at once to save Darbo-Suah's life. Notwithstanding, it was just Cat alone while Dog was barking all around seeking help. Nevertheless, Cat only put out the fire that was near the area where Darbo-Suah's corpse laid. Had it not been for his tireless effort, the old granny's entire body would have burned to ashes. So it was a very sad day in Sani-whenyee. Dog and Cat wept for the old lady. They took her body and washed it clean and wrapped it up in a clean linen cloth, white linen cloth. After that, Dog sent a message by pigeon to fly to all the big cities and towns where Darbo-Suah's offspring and the villagers of Sani-whenyee lived to inform them the matriarch of Sani-whenyee had breathed her last. Now, when the animals in Sani-whenyee found out that Darbo-Suah had really died, that's when they started shedding their crocodile tears, started rolling over the ground. Oh, Darbo, oh, Darbo, oh, Darbo used to do this for us. Oh, Darbo was this. Oh, when my baby was sick, Darbo used to make medicine for my baby to get well. Oh, Darbo, all the fake crying and hypocrisy rolling over the place. Well, as I said, Darbo was 103 years old. In our African tradition, age matters a lot. Age is regarded as a blessing, and especially for those who live long lives like Darbo. For any traditional person who lives up to 80 years plus, 90 years plus, that person is automatically bestowed a high class status. And in the Crown language, we call it Kwi-yewi. Kwi-yewi. The Kwi-yewi is one who has lived very long, supposed to be very knowledgeable, and he's regarded as the most senior person in the secret society. So according to Kwa tradition, someone as old as Darbo-Suah is called a Kwi-yewi in the Crown language. It is a high-class status that is bestowed upon elderly people who are blessed to live more than 8 or 9 decades. But when they pass, the secret societies, all the zoos and council of elders, and the masks must come out to perform for her burial, and the corpse of the Kwi-yewi is immediately disposed of within 24 hours. Within 24 hours, the corpse of a Kwi-yewi must be disposed of, cannot be kept longer than that. That's our tradition. So Darbo-Suah had to be buried before some of her children, great-grandchildren, great-great-great-grandchildren could arrive. So for that matter, most of the remaining elders of the village that traveled to other regions of the Crown Bassa tropical forest, rainforest, walked by foot midnight and arrived in Sani-whenyee before the break of the next morning. I know you will be wondering, say, but those days, there were no telephones. There were no radios. There were no televisions. So how did the message spread so quickly from Sani-whenyee to go to all other parts of the world where all these people were, and for them to be able to come back, for some of them to arrive on time, you know, to bury the Kwi-yewi on time? Well, in our traditional lives and villages and settings, our people had what was called the talking drum. This was a special kind of drum that was prepared by some of the most crafty craftsmen of the time, that when you play it, the sound could echo hundreds of miles away. And the drummers would tap the drum in a special way to communicate an emergency message to the people. So it was one of those means, excuse me, that the people, the animals in Sani-whenyee used to communicate to all the relatives, the children, the grandchildren, the great-grandchildren, the great-great-grandchildren that Darbo-Suah had passed. So when they heard that certain drum beat, they knew that there was an emergency in Sani-whenyee. So for that matter, most of the remaining elders of the village that traveled to other regions of the Crown Bassa tropical rainforest walked by foot midnight and arrived in Sani-whenyee before the break of the next morning. Most of Darbo-Suah's children, grandchildren, and great-great-grandchildren arrived a couple of days later after the old lady's body was laid to rest in accordance with traditional burial guidelines for someone her status. Now, let me just say a little bit about, the death of someone of that status, and also the loss and grieving process in our traditional setting. There's a different way how people who have been westernized grieve the loss of their loved ones. It's different from the way how traditional indigenous Liberians grieve the loss of their loved ones. In the traditional setting, the traditional people portray their love and deep loss by weeping and wailing, rolling on the floor, crying. They don't even eat. They refuse to eat their regular or staple diet. So for instance, in the Crown setting, if a very close relative of mine passed away, in order for us to complete that grieving process, I will cry, I will roll on the ground, I will not take bath for a couple of days, I will be dirty, wear the dirty clothes, because we feel that the life that we've lost is more valuable than the material things of the world. If I were to eat anything, it would not be the staple diet. It would not be rice. It will be something like cassava. It will be something like edibles, plantain, banana, or fruits, vegetables. But I wouldn't eat that staple diet because we want to restrict ourselves and to demonstrate that we love that person. And then our grieving process also, continue. Sometimes it goes further than that, that you will even abstain from having sex with your wife or with your girlfriend or whatever it is, anything that will distract you from focusing on the loss of your relative, that you will prevent from happening or from participating in it, because you want to grieve the loss of your loved one. Then the other aspect of it is that we believe that when our loved ones die, that they go to a life after death. And because they go to a life after death, the period we would mourn for an extended period of time. People in modern days time, even go further where they wear black, they mourn, and a wife or a son or a daughter will mourn for his mom, his wife, and or her husband, will wear that black, maybe like for a year or so, until a certain ceremony is held in order for them to stop wearing black, to return to wearing, a regular color of clothes. So you can see that we have a process to mourn. And when that process to mourn is not observed as it should, then it creates an abomination. It creates an abomination in that society. It creates an abomination with respect to the individuals who are not practicing the regular way of mourning the loss of their loved ones. Also, in the Crown culture, there's a distinction between a wake and a feast. When someone passes, like the way how Darbo-Suah has passed in Sani-whenyee, the observance of that mourning process is called gu. It's called gu, which is a brief mourning process. That means the people are gathering, they're gonna mourn and wail for a short period of time, because there's a time frame required to bury that person. So for that very brief moment, they may do just a brief ceremony, a mini ceremony. So that mini ceremony that they do, that they carry out to bury that person within that short time frame, is called gu. After the gu is held and everyone disperses to return to their respective areas, but before they do that, there's a plan to have a bigger feast later on, because sometimes they are on the farm, they are farming, the brush in the farm is not the right appropriate time for them to have to stay away from their farm work and all of that. So that's why the gu is held. A brief moment of grief and mourning is held, to just kind of begin the process, and then to continue it at a later date. And most of the time they will plan the go. Now gu is the short period. Now they're going to have a go. Now during the gu time, that's when people cry, they mourn and wail. But when it comes to the go time now, that's the time of celebration, because now the person that you've lost has traveled from this world to where they were going, where they were joining to. They were going to our forefathers, wherever they were going. They have now reached. So now the God that you're going to be celebrating is going to be a more lengthy period of time, where people, most of the time, is held after the harvest. After the farm work has been done, people got enough food to eat. The hunters go into the forest to kill animals and all of that, to hunt, and to make sure they got enough meat kind and all of that. And of course, they got domesticated cattle and things, animals that they can also slaughter to kill, like the cows, the goats, the sheep, the ducks, the chickens, and all of that, so then that's when they will have the go. And during the go, that's when a lot of festivity takes place. You have a lot of masks that will come out to celebrate the feast or Darbo-Suah. And that will be an event of celebration. There will be no more mourning. Nobody's going to be crying. Everybody's going to be laughing and all of that. So it's a process. So I'm explaining this to let you Liberians know that what took place in Liberia from 1989 up to the present, where most of the people, the majority of the people are indigenous people who are used to grieving the loss of their people in a special way in order to appease the spirits of our forefathers. Liberians have not been able to do that because of the disruption of our culture and because of the destruction that was heaped upon us by those who wanted to seek power in the country. So some of the things that are going on, the backwardness of what is going on is because the spirits of our forefathers are not pleased with us. They're not pleased with the things that we are doing that are contrary to the rules and regulations of our history and culture. So, as I said, when the news of Darbo-Suah's death was spread around, traditionally, the elders came and they came to lay her to rest because as a Kuyeve, she had to be laid to rest within 24 hours. So after that was done, the children came, and this time around when they came initially to have a gu, to have this brief ceremony, to close up everything, to make sure that everything was properly, done. So most of Darbo-Suah's children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren arrived a couple of days later after the old lady's body was laid to rest in accordance with the traditional burial guidelines for someone of her status. Sani-whenyee was overpopulated. When they heard the death of Darbo-Suah, as much impact as she has had on the people of Sani-whenyee and the animals, they all came from all walks of life to come and pay their last respects to Darbo-Suah. Thousands and thousands of relatives, friends, well-wishers, sympathizers came from all corners of the universe to attend the funeral of the old lady. And as our traditional customs dictate, Africans are very hospitable. That's part of our culture. That's part of our heritage. If you traveled to any part of Liberia, hinterland of Liberia, to any village where you are a stranger, when you appear in a stranger, and those who live in that village realize and recognize that you are a stranger, 9 times out of 10, they will open their doors up to you. They don't have to know you to do that. That's just part of our culture. We were taught that to respect strangers because we don't know when we ourselves will be strangers in a strange land. So when strangers are gathered in a village, the people that live in that village do everything they can to entertain their strangers, to entertain their guests. So thousands and thousands of relatives, friends, well-wishers, sympathizers came from all corners of the universe to attend the funeral of the old lady. Now listen to this. You recall that when the old lady was in danger, when her hut was burning and she needed help, when dog went around asking Billy Goat sheep, cow, chicken, dogs for help so that they could, prevent the death of this old lady. They all turned dog down. They all turned cat down. So it was just only cat and dog that did all they could. But in the end, the old lady died. So now we have all these guests in Sani-whenyee. In Sani-whenyee, they got to eat. And the people got to feed their guests. So as our traditional customs dictate, the guests must be fed and entertained. Since the village comprised of so many domesticated animals, it was no problem to locate meat kind to feed thousands of guests. The first set of animals that fell victims were chicken and duck and their families. The villagers killed every chicken and duck in the village to cook sweet pepper soup, palm butter, cassava leaves, potato greens. You just name it, arrow soup, anything that they could cook. And you know how sweet duck and chicken are. Those people had a nice meal. The following day, the women needed more meat kind to feed their guests. And so the village elders ordered that belly goat and sheep and their families be slaughtered to feed the guests. That's when belly goat and sheep and cow them started saying, if we had known. Oh, but it was too late for if we had known. If you had known, if we had known, we would have listened to dog, we would have joined dog and cat to make sure this old lady didn't get killed. Now we didn't do it, here we are, the people come to eat us. So sometimes we do it to ourselves. When we have the opportunity to save lives, we pay deaf ears to the plight of other people because we feel that we are not the ones that are in danger. But what goes around comes around. And so the following day, the women needed more meat kind to feed their guests. And so the villagers ordered that belly goat and sheep and their families be slaughtered to feed the guests. Of course, to climax traditional burial and ritual ceremonies, the heads of several cows must roll. That's the tradition. And so it was upheld. You know, in our tradition, African, Liberian tradition, when there's a death in the family, one of the highest priced animal that can be slaughtered to celebrate the death of any loved one is a cow. So cow should have known better that for Darbo-Suah, who was 103 years old, that if she passed, that he was going to be one of the targets. But it was too late when he started saying, if he had known. So the tradition was upheld. The villagers slaughtered all the cows in the village, and they fed all their guests that traveled from different parts of the world to attend the burial ceremony of Darbo-Suah or Sani-whenyee. Well, I want to stop there so we can, further our discussion on the next level. Now, the question I have for you is, what is the moral lesson behind this story that I just narrated to you? That's my question to you. Now, let's continue with the discussion. In Africa, we just do not tell tales for fun or pastime. We tell tales because we want to teach our audience a moral lesson. Now, in terms of teaching a moral lesson, what does the story about Darbo-Suah remind you of? To teach that moral lesson, the story that we tell, we got to connect it with something in real life, in reality, so that you will be faced with a reality before you, for you to get more sense out of what, more sense and meaning out of what was told you in the story. So that's what we're going to do now. I've told you the story. Now we're going to compare it with real life situations in Liberia so that the story will make sense to all of you who are listening. And I want you to pass this story along to everybody for them to listen to it. If you want to listen to the story also, it's on the DATI Artist Theater website. All you have to do is just click, log on our website, www.DATIartisttheaterinc.com, and you will be able to get it. And DATI is spelled DEKONTEARTISTHEATREINC.com. And that will take you to the website, and you can click on video. And this particular episode is episode 14, XIV, 14, the Roman numeral XIV 14, episode 14. And the title is Darbo-Suah and the animals in Sani-whenyee. So we say in Africa, we just do not tell tales for fun or pastime. We tell tales because we want to teach our audience a moral lesson. Now, in terms of teaching a moral lesson, what does the story about Darbo-Suah remind you of? And what should the animals in Sani-whenyee have done differently to avoid being slaughtered during the old lady's feast? In addition, what story in Liberia's modern history reminds you of the story of Darbo-Suah and the animals that lived in Sani-whenyee? 1, if the animals in Sani-whenyee were wise enough, they would have cooperated when dog and cat appealed to them to help put out the fire that burned Darbo-Suah to death and destroyed the old lady's heart. Fortunately for dog and cat, they were good Samaritans. They took immediate action when they realized their neighbor was in danger. They even sought help from other animals, but their efforts were in vain because the animals they asked failed to realize that what goes around comes around. They did not have the slightest idea that if the old lady passed, they would be slaughtered during Darbo-Suah's feast. 2, where there is smoke, there must be fire. Therefore, when dog observed smoke coming out of Darbo-Suah's hut, he barked right away, whoo, 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 to alert other animals there was danger in the village. Dog specifically stated where the danger was coming from. So if all the animals had responded collectively in a timely manner and resolved the problem they were faced with, those animals that were slaughtered during the old lady's feast would have saved the old lady's life and their own lives. 3, each animal that dog asked for assistance gave some type of poor excuse, and then when it was already late and their lives were in danger, then the animals started to regret and to say, if we had known, but it was too late. Hence, it is best to drink your soup when it is hot than to drink it cold. Putting things off that you can do on the spot is very dangerous because each day brings its own challenge. Therefore, it is not safe to put off today's challenge for tomorrow because tomorrow is a new day with its own new set of challenges. 4, while African stories are subject to varied interpretations based on who is telling the story or who is listening or reading the story reminds me of 2 real-life stories in Liberia. One, the first story reminds me of Chief Goyen of Nima County raising alarm that there were armed men crossing from the Ivory Coast Liberian border into Liberian territory, but he was shut off by the government and by everybody else. When Chief Goyen informed the Liberian government the rebels were targeting certain ethnic and religious groups, Liberians whose ethnic groups and religion that were not mentioned sat supinely and referred to the rebels as freedom fighters. I don't know whose freedom they were fighting for, and they're still fighting for. However, today all Liberians are feeling the aftermath of being complicit. Henceforward, it is very important that when danger looms over one segment of our society, the rest of us must act swiftly and not sit down and say, it is not me, and just fold our arms and shoulders. Instead, everyone must stand up to resolve the problem that poses danger to one or several or all of us, for in unity there is strength. The second real-life story Darbo-Suah and the animals in Sani-whenyee reminds me of is the current large influx of Burkinabes in Grand Jide County since the Ellen Johnson Sirleaf era. It was alleged, among others, that 1, thousands of undocumented migrant workers are being imported in Grand Jide County to re-people Grand Jide and eventually displace the Crown people from their traditional native land in direct retribution for their resistance of the rebel movement imposed upon the Liberian people by the likes of Charles Taylor and Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. Note that the former president is still overseeing this plan through her successor. 2, some senior Grand Jide officials are presently involved in the importation of undocumented migrant workers to work on their farms to provide cheap labor while depriving their constituents that elected them to power local job opportunities. They are providing undocumented migrant workers in an attempt to prolong the suffering of their own people and to perpetuate themselves in power. 3, numerous former complaints were made to the government of Liberia over the years by some senior Grand Jide as officials and the Grand Jide University Students Association, but the WIA government has remained silent under the pretext of observing ECOWAS protocol that allows for free movement of West Africans from one region to the other. What is very interesting to note is that no Liberian can enter Burkina Faso without proper documentation, but we have a huge influx of Burkinabes in Liberia that the government of Liberia cannot account for. Besides, these undocumented migrants are in constant clashes with Grand Jidians over farmlands, and no proper redress is given Crown citizens when they complain to local county officials about the abuse of their human rights on their own soil and under the watchful eyes of individuals they elected to serve them. 4, furthermore, it is no hidden secret to Liberians in the entire world that the presence of undocumented Burkinabes poses serious security, social, health, and political risks to Liberia and the crown people whose land they are now encroaching for several reasons. A, Burkina Faso was one of several African nations that was used as training base, and Burkinabes were used as mercenaries that fought alongside the National Patriotic Front of Liberia NPFL rebels that destabilized the security and infrastructure of Liberia. B, a huge drove of Burkinabes, over 10,000 plus, are moving in Liberian territory at a time when Blaise Compaoré, the dethroned president of Burkina Faso, who is cohort to the genocide in Liberia, is seeking political asylum in neighboring like Cote d'Ivoire. Therefore, I recommend the United Nations, the African Union, European Union, and ECOWAS set up an active surveillance team in the border region between La Cote d'Ivoire and Liberia in the Grand Jide area to ensure the security of the people of Grand Jide and to avert another attempt to displace and or massacre the crown people of Liberia. C, Liberia is conducting a national census. It is not clear whether undocumented non-citizens of Liberia will be counted, especially as it pertains to the undocumented Burkinabes in question. If this is not cleared up, it may undermine the national census at the same time jeopardize the smooth conduct of presidential and general elections next year. Therefore, we need some clarity from the government of Liberia regarding whether or not those undocumented citizens, individuals, migrant workers in the Grand Jide area and other parts of Liberia, whether or not they will be counted as part of the national census of Liberia. Lastly, I want to conclude Darbo-Suah and the animals in Sani-whenyee by reminding all Liberians about the late patriotic Chief Goyon of Nema County. He blew an alarm very early enough for Liberians to have gotten their act together to prevent the calamity we are now experiencing. But he was ignored just the same way dog was ignored by the animals when dog went to seek help to rescue Darbo-Suah. Well, fortunately for dog and cat, it was a taboo for the villagers of Sani-whenyee to eat cat or dog. So dog and cat were out of the equation. They were safe when it came time to making animal sacrifices. I pray we will learn our lesson as a nation and people by taking decisive and collective actions when there is a smoking gun to protect all citizens of Liberia as guaranteed in the Constitution of Liberia. Amen. Ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the end of episode 14, Darbo-Suah and the animals in Sani-whenyee. I hope that this story will inspire you to put your country first. This has been your producer and presenter, Dr. Joseph Tomongalade Baba, Executive Director and founder of Decanty Artist Theater, saying thank you for now, and thanks to all our supporters and broadcasters for relaying this program in Liberia. Thank you, and bye-bye for now.